Welcome back to our series Understanding CBET, and you have been focusing on CBET principle number 4 on assessment of learning outcomes, and you have been looking at support materials. And in our tutorial today, our continuation is on how then do we develop assessment tools. So in our previous video, we developed performance criteria weighting, and we did allocate marks or weights to one of the unit of competency. And today you want to see now how do we develop assessment tools. So when you talk about assessment tools, are instruments that we use to measure the learner's ability to perform specific tasks. And these tasks have already been highlighted in occupational standard, or if this learner has the ability to demonstrate skill as outlined in the competency standards. So basically, that's why we develop these tools. So they're instruments to measure various aspects of learners' ability to perform tasks. And we did talk about that you can measure knowledge, as well you can measure skills and attitude of your learners. So what are the categories of these assessment tools? One, we have what we call candidate tools. So these are tools that we are going to give to the learners, and that's what we are going to develop. So all the written assessments, the practical assessment that need to be performed or be done by your students or learners are what are termed as candidate tools. And then you have a category of assessment tools that are called assessor's guide. And assessor here means the trainer who is actually going to administer these candidate tools. And therefore, what guides the candidate tools or those assessments that we are going to develop. So in other case, these are sometimes termed as marking guide, or normal language that we know marking schemes. So when you're developing candidate tools, in this case assessment or exams, then you have to accompany it with a marking guide, and basically those are assessment guide. So those are the categories of assessment tools that we are going to develop moving forward. So let's start looking at what are these candidate tools. So when you talk about these candidate tools, we have different components. You have written tests. You also have practical tests. And in some scenarios, we are going to have oral questioning or oral tests. So basically, these are what we need to develop, and each will be accompanied with other tools as we are going to look at. So let's start looking at written assessments. And of course, all of us are familiar with written assessments. So these are tests that are used to assess learners' understanding of theoretical concepts and factual information. So majority of our theory was to test the knowledge aspect. Then we need to develop written tests or assessments, so they're able to assess knowledge. So it's always good to understand what are these tools able to assess. So your choice of assessment will depend on what you want to assess. So if you opt to go for written assessments, and that's what TVET CDAC is also advocating for, using variety of assessment methods, then we are going to develop written assessment to assess theoretical concepts of the learner. So when you talk about construction of written assessments, there are categories of items or tests that, based on TVET CDAC guideline on development of assessment tools, they can either take these types of form. One is objective test items. And what are these? So these are basically, they have specific or predetermined answers. So they require extremely short responses. For example, like true or false questions, multiple choice questions, matching questions, or sometimes there are questions that require completion items. So depending on which levels of qualification that you have to set written assessment, it can take this type of category, that is objective test items. So all true false question and the other examples are regarded as objective test items. The other bit is essay test items, and you're all familiar with this. So they're used to where the examinee is required to read the item or the test or the question, then they're required to formulate a response and write it down. And it can take different forms. It could be the extended essays, sometimes they're called unrestricted essays, where the learner has leeway to write all the responses that is required. We also have short answer type of questions. They're also regarded as essay. And these short answers basically, sometimes they are referred to as restricted questions or tests, where you only need to provide a specific responses to those type of questions. So depending again on the level of qualification, then you'll be required to develop this type of questions. And the last bit is performance test items. Though basically it doesn't fall on written assessments, so you're going to look at it under practical tests. And we're talking about performance test items. They test skills or competency, and it could include object identification or procedure evaluations, or sometimes it can take product evaluation depending on the standard you're looking at. So it can take different forms. So basically these are categories of written assessments: the objective test items, the essay test items, and the performance test item, but we're going to expound on it on practical tests. So what are these practical tests? So another form of tools that you can develop is practical tests, and these are regarded as performance-based assessments. So you're looking at a learner able to perform a particular task as outlined in that unit of competency. So the only way to assess performance, skills, competency is through practical tests. But again, if you look at the TVET CDAC guideline on what constitutes a practical test, so it takes different forms. And we're going to look at how you're able to distribute all these forms of practicals. Remember again, you're being guided by your assessment plan that we developed earlier. So we did outline what the candidate was supposed to do, and we did address practical tests. So which forms of these practicals are we talking about? So we need to ask ourselves, what constitutes a practical test? So based on TVET CDEP guideline, it could take a form of role plays, so you can conduct them in class or during assessments. Simulations, so you can simulate a particular environment or any other form that can take a simulation aspect. So those are regarded as practical tests. You also have the practical tasks. So if you have labs, you can always prepare for practicals, and then you're able to assess adequately. Demonstrations are also regarded as practicals. So depending on how and when you perform demonstrations, could be in class during sessions or any other time. So anytime a trainee are given task to demonstrate, then you can always develop some other tools that you're going to look at. And then you're able to allocate marks and provide the marks adequately. So demonstration, again, are considered to be practical tests. You also have projects. There are certain qualifications require you to conduct projects. And therefore, those projects are also regarded as practical tests. It could be develop something, could be carrying out a research project, developing business plans, and many others. Those are all regarded as projects, and therefore they also constitute a practical test. And the last bit is presentations. So when a learner is able to present an assignment or these projects or demonstration, then they're also regarded as practical tests. So if you look at your performance criteria and look at your PC weighting allocation of marks under practical, then you can look at how to distribute all the practicals that you have, as we are going to look at in our next tutorial. So in our next video, we are now going to develop the real assessment tools, the candidate tools, both written, orals, practicals. Then we see how we move from there. So thank you for your support. Let's continue to subscribe, comment, like and share these videos.